My friends, Ryzen 3000 is launched, and I feel like there are a couple of pieces that have been tremendously overlooked, and it's the APUs. We're gonna start off today with a review of the Ryzen 3 3200G, and holy freaking crap, the age of dedicated GPUs is dead. It's gone. Stupid. Don't need them anymore. My goodness, this thing has blown me away, and I cannot wait to talk about it after I tell you about today's video sponsor, Privacy.com. Privacy.com protects your privacy while you're shopping on the internet.
I love my privacy protected.
You wouldn't use the same password on all of your websites across the internet for all of your logins, would you?
No, I wouldn't.
Well, you would if you're an idiot. And I know you're not because you're watching the UFD Tech channel. We've got a lot of smart people in our audience, isn't that right?
Yeah.
That's where Privacy.com comes in to give you dedicated card numbers for wherever you're shopping on the internet.
I want an infinite amount of cards.
Not only can you create cards for dedicated websites, but you can also create them for specific amounts. So let's say you have a Spotify subscription, which you know is going to be $10 a month. You can make sure that card has a limit of $10 to be spent per month.
Yeah, I'm protected that way.
And because you're having your card locked down to specific retailers or websites, you would know when you get hacked before they do, because you'll see the card being charged when it's not supposed to be.
So safe.
And the best part is, if you go to privacy.com/UFD, you get $5 for free on your first purchase with them.
That's $5 whole.
It's free real estate.
It's more than $4.
So you get all of the cards that you need to protect your shopping privacy. You get $5 for free, and you get the peace of mind knowing that if something goes wrong, you're still protected thanks to privacy.com.
They've saved customers over $100 million in the last 2 years.
So check them out at the link in the video description, and let's go ahead and start talking about the 3200G. My friends, this is based on the Zen Plus architecture. So this is not the new Zen 2 architecture that's coming with, let's say, the Ryzen 5 3600. However, that doesn't mean that AMD didn't make any improvements to this CPU. It's still 4 cores and 4 threads. However, they did upgrade the clocks on both the CPU and the GPU. So you're going from a 3.5 gigahertz base clock up to 3.6, and you're going from 3.7 gigahertz boost up to 4 gigahertz boost. And then on the GPU side of things, you're going from 1100 megahertz core clock to 1250 megahertz core clock. So significant improvements being made all around. You're getting shrunk down from the 14 nanometer process to the 12 nanometer process of Zen Plus. And it seems a little underwhelming because of that, and it's probably one of the reasons why it's the unsung hero of this launch. But this, my friends, is the best $100 that you can spend if you're building a gaming PC and you don't want a graphics card. You don't need a graphics card. Actually, we have a Radeon 7 in this build, but we have the water block just making RGB. That's how useful it is with the 3200G. Which I want to talk about that because there have been some key improvements here, not just to the clocks, but AMD has also made it so that there's a higher RAM frequency based support. It went from 2667 to 2933. However, we did all of our testing with 3200 megahertz, which is a pretty standard setup, 16 gigabytes of Corsair Vengeance Pro RGB. And while the boost clock of the 3200G is 4 gigahertz, we were actually all core boosting to 3.8 gigahertz. So that's about what you can expect from the 3200G out of the box. And we did all of our testing at both 1080p and 720p. But I'm gonna go through these benchmarks, but stick around for after it because that's when we get to the exciting part of this chip. So what we see is in a lot of games at 1080p, you're getting actually seriously respectable playable frame rates. So CSGO 1080p, we saw 141 FPS at the lowest settings, whereas once we bumped it down to 720p, we got over 200 FPS, which is good enough for most casual or even slightly enthusiastic players out there. Far Cry New Dawn was the worst performing of the bunch, going from 24.8 FPS at 1080p to 43 at 720p. It's a 76% improvement, but still not good. The Division 2, we had 45 FPS at 1080p and then 77 at 720p. PUBG, we saw 37 at 1080p, seriously playable, and 65 at 720p, over 60 FPS. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, we had 34 at 1080p, 56 at 720p. Grand Theft Auto 5, we saw 71 at 1080p, and then 720p saw 97. Hitman 2 was also a terrible performer, less than 30 at 1080p, but then we saw a bump up to 48 FPS, the largest increase out of the bunch, 83% at 720p. Resident Evil 2, we went from 38 to 58 FPS. Devil May Cry 5, we had 44 at 1080p, 81 at 720. World War Z, we had 53 at 1080p and 78 at 720p. Fortnite did pretty decently, 88 FPS at 1080p, 154 at 720. And then Apex Legends, 45 FPS at 1080p, 69 at 720p. So you can get 60 FPS on most games at lowest settings, of course, but you can still play most AAA titles and most of the most popular games right now by picking up a 3200G, getting over 60 FPS in all of the titles at 720p and even some of them at 1080p. So you can enjoy a really good gameplay experience with this thing. But because AMD's made some key improvements on the 3200G, as I mentioned, the most exciting part isn't the stock settings, but what you can get with the overclock on this thing. So, as I would expect from a Zen Plus chip, I should be able to get over 4 gigahertz, which as most 2200Gs, we're hitting in the 3.8 to 3.9 all-core overclocks. We were able to get 4.1 with our 3200G. We could have hit 4.2, but we would have had to bump the voltage up higher than we wanted. So 4.1 all-core overclock. Actually saw that we got a decent increase on our Cinebench score, going from 587 to 612 with the 4.1 gigahertz overclock. But again, that's not the most exciting part. The most exciting part is the GPU overclock. Can you guess what the max overclock on the 2200G was? I'll just tell you, 1600 megahertz was about what most people could get out of the Vega 8 graphics that's in this thing. We were able, on our 3200G, using roughly the same voltage settings as what everybody had on the 2200G, we were able to hit 1800 megahertz. That is a 44% overclock. So we saw a 7% overclock on the CPU, going from 3.8 gigahertz all-core boost to 4.1 gigahertz all-core overclock, but then going from 1250 megahertz on the GPU to 1800 megahertz, 44% increase. So 7 on the CPU, 44 on the GPU, and actually once we put it into games, what we saw was we got an increase of roughly 15 to 20% in most of the games that we tested. I went back and specifically wanted to see would it put us into a new threshold with some of the games, and we saw that Far Cry New Dawn, 24 FPS on stock, still didn't hit a 30 average with a 16% increase. It's at 28.9, so still not playable. You'll want to go 720p for that. But World War Z, we went from 53 to over 60 FPS average, and then the Division 2, we went from a 45 average to 54 average. That is a big difference in just something that cost $100 total for your CPU. You're getting a graphics card plus a CPU, and it just makes it so that you can actually play most of the modern games at really respectable and enjoyable frame rates. I know that we could have a Radeon 7 just here for show, and I'm used to playing, 60 plus FPS at 1440p, but I am still not long for my days in college where I had to play on a crappy graphics card, Team Fortress 2, watching it go at 20 FPS. I remember those days, and the 3200G makes it so that nobody actually really has to experience that anymore. That's kind of just gone. If you buy the new AMD APUs, you're gonna have a good gaming experience. That's freaking crazy. And if we just quickly compare to the Intel alternatives, what you have is the i3-9100 and the i3-9100F. The 9100 costs $130 and has a 4.2 gigahertz boost clock. That's it. It's not that much better than the 3200G. Obviously, this doesn't have the IPC improvements of Zen 2, but you're still getting 4.1 gigahertz all-core overclock when the 9100 can't even overclock at all. And then if you want to save a little bit of money and pick up the 9100F, which is going for $95 as of the time of recording, you get no dedicated graphics because it's an F-series CPU. So you actually have no Intel equivalent at the same price point as the 3200G. You add that to the fact that you can can get a cheaper B450 motherboard with this, or potentially even some B350s if they have a BIOS chip that was large enough to kind of be upgraded to this one. And you have a recipe for the best value budget gaming systems that you could possibly have on the market right now. It's probably worth it to make sure that you spend a little bit extra on higher frequency RAM. But if you're willing to overclock, you might want to just spend $30 on an aftermarket cooler instead of the Wraith Stealth that comes with this. And you have a really, really good gaming system on your hands for very cheap. $300 total, maybe, is what you're looking at. That's fantastic. And if you want to just keep it at stock, the Wraith Stealth does a good enough job for you so that you don't need to worry about anything else. But I actually am way more impressed with the 3200G than I thought I was going to. The 44% overclock that I was getting on this thing blew me away. 1800 megahertz was fantastic. And I'm just so excited that I have this. And I'm gonna be putting this actually in a build for my son. Gonna be doing a cheap little budget gaming build for him so that he can have a computer at home, because he's about the age where he should probably have his own dedicated personal computer. But that's it. What do you think of the 3200G? We have links in the video description for you to pick them up. If you wanna buy one, you can use our affiliate codes. That gives us a small kickback. And then don't forget that if you're shopping on the internet, to use today's sponsor, privacy.com. Go to privacy.com/UFD, get $5 free, and protect yourself on the internet.
Amazing. Practice safe shopping.
Also, if you'd like to support us directly, you can do so over at our Patreon, patreon.com/UFD Tech. We upload our videos early and without sponsors there so that you can have a more concise viewing experience there as well. And then if you want me to do an overclocking guide on the APUs, let me know down in the comments. Is that something you're interested in? I'm keen to hear from you down below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this review. Get subscribed to stay up to date on all of our tech related content. I'm Brett with the UFD Tech channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see your smiling faces again in the next video. Love you too. Bye. 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 Yes.